All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the Orangevale Recreation Park District Board of Directors meeting for Thursday, February 14th. We'll call it 6:35. The Board of Directors may take up any agenda item at any time regardless of order listed. Action may be taken on any item on the agenda. Roll call.
Swenson, present. Stickney.
Here.
Mraz.
Here.
Grunberg. Here. Montez. Here. And Greg Fell, Horacio Orangevale, and Pravon Ashton, Basin Bay. Oh, and Melissa.
All right, let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the agenda, except for taking item number 13C off the agenda.
Correct.
The rest of it will be as written.
I move that we approve the agenda with the removal of 13C as presented.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's see.
It's actually D, 13D.
13D,
All
okay.
right, I revise that.
All right.
I motion that we approve the agenda, removing item 13D.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Sharon seconds the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, so it's a 5-0 vote. Any person may address the board upon any subject within the jurisdiction of the Orangevale Recreation Park District, with each speaker being limited to 3 minutes. However, the chairperson can impose reasonable limitations to the maximum time per person and per agenda item to allow the board to complete its business. Any matter that requires action will be referred to staff or committee for report and action at a subsequent meeting. Nobody wants to speak, so we'll go on to minutes, approval of minutes from January 10th.
I move that we approve the minutes as provided for January 10th.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. So let's go ahead and vote.
Stickney.
Yes.
Mraz.
Yes.
Grunberg.
Yes.
Montez.
Yes.
Swenson, yes.
Okay, item 7A, correspondence, attorney's billing for December 2018.
I move we approve the billing for attorney December 2018.
I'll second that motion. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, comments? Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Mraz.
Yes.
Grunberg.
Yes.
Montez.
Yes.
Swenson, yes. Stickney.
Yes. All right, consent. Let's see, consent calendar. I need a motion to approve these consent item calendar.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. So let's go ahead and vote.
Grunberg.
Yes.
Montez.
Yes.
Swenson, yes. Stickney.
Yes.
Mraz.
Yes.
Okay, standing committees, there weren't any last month, so we'll go on to 11A, monthly activity report. Greg?
So, most of the things we had a chance to talk about at the 31st meeting, but things are moving along. We have an item on tonight's agenda regarding the Hazel Avenue sidewalk improvement project, and there's a little more information in regard to that. I spoke with the supervisor at the county, and it looks favorable in regard to the sidewalk from the end of our sidewalk to the Regency Baptist Church on the east side of Hazel. So we'll see, that will come at a subsequent meeting because it comes with it some right-of-way language as well as that. And I don't really have that much more to say right now. He is working with Supervisor Frost's office as to some alternatives, but it looks pretty favorable from what he said. So it'll probably come back in March to the boards.
And then from the Regency Baptist to the Elm, it's not going to be paid?
It's part of the project.
Okay.
Is all of that section.
Okay. All right, good, Tom.
That's awesome.
And then, as you know, we also have an item on the agenda. We've been working with the other park districts on a 5-year update to the park development fee plan, and there were several meetings this month or last month in regard to that, and it's on the agenda tonight. And that's about all I have as far as the administrative area. Jason, do you have anything, or Mel, do you have anything on the rec side that you'd like to highlight?
As you will see in the program highlights, I just wanted to highlight the fact that Stephen Miranda is our longest instructor here and is celebrating his 18th year instructing with us, 20 years with his actual entity, but 18 with us. So that's
So,
wow.
send him a letter or anything? Or,
Something.
He's actually going to be conducting his anniversary here next month. So he's going to be doing a special in the auditorium with the instructor that's coming in from Japan, I believe it is.
Can we get a
Yes.
date on that? That would be fun to,
Absolutely.
just to kind of recognize or something.
Yes.
all right, I'll do it. Yeah, I think we got it.
Something.
And we did like there's a little email with a statement of, but not an actual certificate because we figured he's still going to be here for his 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, but some kind of acknowledgement. That's just cool.
Amazing.
I've heard great things about him.
And then Adrian will be backing him up right behind that group. Adrian is right just a couple months behind Stephen.
I guess the Tiger Sharks are signing up.
Yeah, we're about 200, running about 230 right now.
Okay, because somewhere along the same, it was 90, but,
Family.
A family,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
which, 230.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I think we maxed out last year at 250.
And I guess the boys and girls basketball is doing this, you have to add some players? Or?
Oh yeah, so we had our top-notch, our Winter Youth Basketball, and typically it was a Tuesday, Thursday program, and we had so many kids, we kind of would max out at 40, and we were at 60, with 20 on the wait list, so we added a Wednesday session for them to add more into it. It just blew up this year.
That's awesome.
Our RCO, I guess the winds are killing us.
We've been pretty fortunate, considering the amount of water that we have gotten in the ground and the winds on and off that have gone through the area. So for the most part, just broken branches, so we've been pretty fortunate. We even took the opportunity to kind of carry on and do a little cleanup over at the disc golf.
Looks good. I drove by
Yeah,
it
it's-
inside. It looked pretty this
It takes a lot, but I mean, just starting in one area and just kind of moving along. So we'll see if
tonight-
weather permits, a little bit of extra work.
Tonight's supposed to be pretty heavy winds too, so
Yeah.
see what it looks like in the morning.
So our bridge is still, not very stable. So we'll deal with those,
I think we can work around after April 15th, right, because it's on the creek.
Yeah, there's not really much to do because it's pretty hard to do much as far as really anchoring them, to the ground. Unfortunately, these really high rain events, they're just gonna get washed out. And more than likely, we're gonna have to just do this pretty much every year. We do it every year, so.
I'll try to come up with a solution to, maybe we'll do a couple with a concrete pillar or some sort so they can be anchored down, and then give it a try to see, or maybe move them a little bit on higher grounds, but, you know, we'll just work with that. I'll also like to point out that we replaced the impeller of the pull motor. There was a seal leak on it.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And they came and inspected it, and the recommendation was to replace the impeller because it was already pretty
More.
deteriorated. So they recommend, because you will have to redo the seal and the impeller if they did it again in a year or two. So we just went ahead and took care of that. So apart from that, I mean, just basic cleanup, make sure our drains are cleared out and we don't have any hazards out there.
And it's only one beaver that's needs to be relocated?
That's, we hope it's only one. I think, you know, some trees that have been chopped down, but, and then one dam that we saw, so, yeah, it'll be interesting if they find them and relocate them. So the county's gonna have to be involved because it's protect the area and the.
They worked their way back, it's hilarious.
And, I mean, they rebuilt this dam in
Daily.
3 months, less than 3 months. So they do some pretty quick work.
You're really afraid of this?
Yeah, good size trees also, probably like a 8-incher or so. It was probably like a 15-foot tree that
That they put in
that
there.
they, yeah, it's
Goodness.
pretty good work that they put out there.
You need your degree.
You're done with the audit, and Larry's gonna talk to us about it in a minute or two. Looking forward to that. Okay, anything else, Greg?
Nope, just the update, we had a recent update. The next scheduled meeting for the Electric Greenway is April 9th, and that's moving along nicely. We've been in discussion with some of the residents, which is real positive, and so that's moving forward. And then we have the Finance Committee meeting scheduled for Friday, March 29th.
I think Sharon's got something she wants on.
Something I spoke to Larry about, I'll just email you something that could be put on the agenda in the potential budget.
Okay, for the Finance meeting
For the
agenda?
Finance Committee on the 29th.
Sounds good.
All right, no unfinished business. New business, 13A.
All right, presentation and approval of the Little Free Library project at Pecan Park by Zane Shumway. Zane and his father decided to take a road trip, and they had to leave today. So he is not, he called me this, I think it was this morning, or yesterday afternoon, and said that they couldn't make it. So I'm going to stand in for him, hopefully get your approval, and then either he'll come back next month or when the project's completed. But it's just one of the Little Free Libraries that we've done before. This will be placed at the big day of service right next to the rock garden there at Pecan. So we're going to add a couple benches as part of that project and just kind of spice up that area a bit, and then put the Little Free Library into that area. And so it's part of his senior project. And so we think we'll do a good job, and he has a mentor that's helping him with it. And so we think it'll turn out. And so we're looking for your approval. It's not, at this point, it's not any cost to us, but it certainly wouldn't be very much if anything. So,
Well, I move that we approve the Little Free Library project at Pecan Park by Zane Shumway.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. So if it ends up being some cost, that's a little
We'll bring that to the board, but I'm not expecting that it will be any cost, so.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on it? All right.
Montez?
Yes.
Swenson, yes. Stickney?
Yes.
Moraz?
Yes.
Grunberg?
Yes.
Okay. 13B, approval of Orangevale Recreation Park District's fiscal audit.
All right, well, we have Larry Bain with us. Larry has done our audit for a number of years and is here to present the audit to us. You have the management report in front of you with a letter from the district administrator, and I'll turn the time over to Larry.
All right, thank you, Greg. So yeah, this report covers the period July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2018. So the 2017-18 fiscal year. And on page 1, this is the independent auditor's report. And so the district hires me to give an opinion on your financial statements. So this report here has my opinion at the very bottom, the last paragraph there. So as you'll see, it's a clean, unmodified opinion. So that's telling you that based on my audit, the numbers presented in the report are supported with underlying data and documents that have been audited and are fairly stated in all material respects. We set parameters with materiality, so we're not testing every dollar, but based on our audit, as far as on the material threshold, financial statements are fairly stated. Okay. On pages 3 and 4, page 3, this gives you a snapshot of June 30, 2018 of your current assets and current liabilities, but also it has your long-term assets, which in this case would be your capital assets, and then it would have your long-term liabilities, which are footnoted further in the report. I think it's note 3. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but just to let you know that the difference between the financial statements on pages 3 and 4 and then 5 and 7 is a long-term basis versus a short-term snapshot. And normally I focus more on the short-term financials, which would be on pages 5 and 7. And this is how the compass is prepared. Compass would reflect your short-term assets and liabilities, and then the modified accrual basis of accounting on page 7 would reflect your current expenditures, current revenues. So on page 5, you'll see that in the general fund that the district had about $1.4 million in cash. And when you compare that to expenditures of about 1.9, you'll see there's a pretty strong cash balance. We like to see like 50% would be considered a reasonable carryover cash balance. So you're well in excess of 50% of your expenditures as far as what you're carrying over from one period to the next. And then under your fund balance, you've got your different components there. The restricted fund balance would be your developer deposits and your in lieu fees. And then the assigned and the unassigned, these are categorized in the footnotes, and there's a breakdown of what is considered assigned and then the remaining unassigned. So it's all in compliance with your GASB 54 policy. Okay. Let's see here. Again, I'm not going to go into detail on this. On page 7, just the bottom line, the net change in fund balance. In the general fund, there was a $404,000 increase to the fund balance. So your expenditures and your expenditures were under revenue, and your transfers by $404,000. So pretty strong position there and a result of operation. One other item I will point out on page 5, a pretty significant error that occurred of over $200,000 by the county. On page 5, under the assets, there's a due from other government of $215,000. About $206,000 of that was a result of an error by the county where they took about over $200,000 in cash from the district. That was an error. And so that has been resolved in the 2018-19 fiscal year. I haven't audited the 2018-19 fiscal year, but the county had a change in the payroll system in January of 2018, and they started double counting like health insurance and SCRS. Those were the two big ones. So they were taking out what the normal cost would be, and then they were doubling it. So anyway, pretty big error.
Yeah, so is there a way that the district can notice that? It's just like under the radar that we don't see till you audit?
No, I was gonna say, how?
Yeah, how do we not?
Yeah,
It just comes out of our account and we're not checking that.
right, yeah, so it's in an account that's not like part of your budget account.
Right.
So you wouldn't see it in your budget, and because you're not necessarily reconciling cash like you would if you had a bank account, because it's coming out of the county treasurer, it pretty much did go under the radar. It's going through it was going through the payroll liability account. They have these payroll liability accounts that are really complex to understand, and that's where the error was occurring. And pretty much every district that I've audited, every Rec and Park district, had the same issue. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you on that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the staff, Jennifer in particular, so have we talked to the county about this?
Oh, they're aware of it.
Yeah.
And
Do we get interest back on the amount they took out of our account?
They should,
Yeah,
yeah.
they should pay us interest.
And
on what was
penalties.
taken out, yeah.
Yeah.
because they've had it for over a year, correct?
Well, 6
Yeah.
months, it's January,
It
right?
started in January 2018. I think the correction was made sometime in September of 2018. So about,
It's been over a year that they've.
well, yeah, it was within about a 9-month period.
Right, but they've been sitting, they took the extra 200,000 out, and so they still got it.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is over a year then.
Well, yeah, I mean, within a 9-month period, between them taking it out and reimbursing the district occurred.
Reimbursed us yet?
Yeah, because it was January 2018 and then September 2018.
Okay, so
Yeah.
as long as we got most of it back anyway.
Yeah,
Interest.
well, yeah, other than the interest. I did just, Jennifer just showed me the current balance sheet, and it looks like the balance is back to where I would expect it.
Okay, but we'll do that.
Yeah, but that'll be part of next year's audit. So anyhow,
Good on it.
yep, yep. Okay, so other than that, I'm not going to go into, again, into great detail. Sharon and I, we were talking about the pension earlier today. The pension liability did go up a little bit during the year. The county, which follows PERS, they lowered their discount rate, and as a result, the pension liability did spike a little bit more. So because of that, the pension expense is driven by the liability, and so you can expect future contributions to increase for your CalPERS. I did also discuss with Sharon as far as looking at ways to reduce your interest cost on the net pension liability. And there, I'm not positive with the county system. With PERS, you can reduce your amortization period, and it will result in a significant cost saving on interest. I'm pretty sure the county will also have that option. So it's something that you'll want to look at.
I've got a question. Are the employee code classifications correct so that the deductions are made accordingly to the occupation? Because I remember when I was on, not Capri, but Pardiac, the deductions that the state was making, there was an error on the code classification. So they had the employee misclassified and they were taking out more money on the basis of a occupational code.
Okay.
So I don't know if that plays into them deducting correctly. It wasn't just us at the time. I noted it, I found it, the error in a review process, and when I found it, it was oh no, because it affected all the park districts, because they had, not all, but quite a few, because they had miscategorized some of the employees. So they were charging more and under some less because the codes weren't correct.
Okay, yeah. No, I did not note any errors in the deductions and in the employer contribution. I think that you're all classified as miscellaneous. I believe tier 3 is what you're categorized under. So they don't really classify by position or anything like that. Everybody is pretty much grouped into the same code. So, and then they have pre-2013 and post-2013. But yeah.
Question for you, Greg, on item page 6, the item 2, discussing this optimizing the high deduction, that we suggest the board review the policy. So do we take care of that? Page 6, item 2.
In this.
Or you're in the management report?
Not in the funds.
You made a suggestion. And I thought we had already done something about this, but I'm just double checking. Page 6 of the report, number 2, top of the page.
Oh, the high deductible?
Yeah. Yeah, we did it, but we suggest the board review the policy. So did we go back and review it?
Yes, that was, you remember which month it was that we came back to the December?
I think it was December.
Okay.
I think it was just a month after we talked to Larry, and if you remember, it was on the agenda, and we just corrected the statement about how the money was going to be allocated.
I thought,
Yeah.
I want to make sure.
Yeah, I remember that we did it, and then we just changed the verbiage slightly on the contributions of the district, kind of just to,
Right. As the
I just want to
difference
double
it was just a
between,
small little tweak.
now I remember, the whole thing was the difference between, the district's contribution for, I believe it was the Sutter, wasn't it? That the district would pay the full amount of the difference between the regular HMO for Kaiser and what the high deductible would be for either Kaiser or Sutter. And so
As long
that
as
was
the high
the,
deductible didn't go above.
correct, as long as the high
That was the
deductible didn't go
specification.
above Kaiser.
Right.
And so I think that was the whole question, and that was, we had an agenda item that discussed that and was approved.
I thought we did.
Corrected it, sure.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, we did. I recall that.
Anything else, Larry?
Yeah, and then I know also, I was reviewing with Craig earlier about the other finding, 18-2, and I know there's a resolution being developed to correct the 18-2 that'll, and that was for the developer in lieu funds and the in lieu funds that, or the developer fee fund and the in lieu funds, and how that was allocated to the different projects, but yeah, anyway.
So it was on the agenda for tonight, we pulled it off because Larry discussed with me, just to make it even more clear, we are going to reference the former resolutions that allocated the money, but they weren't quite specific enough as to what projects and the amounts that they were going to be funded. So we're gonna just put in some language that says that this particular resolution supersedes previous resolutions. So that will come to you then next month.
All right.
And the changes that we talked about today.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, so there will be one of, the report that you have is a draft, and Sharon did bring up, or brought to my attention that there was a out of balance in the deferred outflow category of the pension. And so when I reviewed it, the change had not been made for the deferred outflow related to contributions made subsequent to the measurement date, which was like 149,000 in the prior year, 142,000 this year. So in the financial statement on page 3, the deferred outflow will be reduced $6,717, and the effect will also be reflected in the expenses also on page 4. But anyway, that was the only change. The footnote was correct, but the...
Footnote had a different amount than we
Yeah,
thought.
yeah, and the footnote had the correct amount. So anyway, it was a good observation. Thank you.
I'm still an accountant.
That's right.
Although, well, I've never had to audit government accounts, so it's
Yeah.
still gnarly.
Yeah.
What I have to do.
All right, so, anything else?
Yeah, no, that was all. Just, we'll finalize this. I'll need to get the management representation letter signed by Greg and board president, and then once I receive that, I'll be ready to bind and issue the report.
Okay. We'll finish up 14th of next month, or?
We'll finish what?
I think we can approve it now,
Yeah, we'll
right?
approve it
Yeah.
tonight.
No, yeah.
That resolution is just on, is on a kind of a different issue. It's
We'll
on-
accept it, yeah.
It's on the allocation
We'll
of
approve it
those
tonight, and then
fees.
we'll sign everything.
So should I make the motion? I move we approve the ORPD fiscal audit 2017-18 pending the adjustments to the pension liability that was just discussed.
And should we
Yeah,
have the resolution correction as well in there?
No, that's a totally separate matter.
Yeah, that's different.
It's to the,
That's just a
deferred
management
outflow.
thing. It doesn't deal with the audit.
All right, well, I'll second then.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and we'll approve it.
Swenson, yes. Stickney?
Yes.
Moraz?
Yes.
Brunberg?
Yes.
Montez?
Yes. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, all right.
Good catch,
Thank you.
too. Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
very nice.
So,
Thanks, Larry.
as far as the paperwork, you'll show that whatever she said in addition to the recommended motion.
Uh-huh.
Right. All right, so then we're on to 13C, approval of resolution 19-02-612, establishing a schedule of fees. And I have one question, but let's get a motion in a second, and then we can go to another question.
Can we just give a brief staff report?
Sure.
So this is something that we do every year, and we update our fees. As stated in the staff report, the major things that we're looking at were the minimum wage increases, as well as supply costs, utility increases. And as part of doing this, our staff I think, went to some extra work this year in regard to surveying some other districts to kind of compare our fees to other districts. We don't use that as a primary gauge for how we set our fees, but it is nice to do a comparison to get an idea of how room rates, as much as you can, compare one to another. Every facility is a little different, size of the rooms, the amount, the type of amenities that are provided, but we've tried to do those comparisons and put them into perspective in looking at this increase of fees. And generally what we've looked at is a 5% increase, and we like to kind of average out the additional costs and then have some type of method to raising the fees in all of the different categories. I just want to say a lot of thanks to the staff, both that did all the surveying work, as well as Jason was kind of a lead on this in regard to putting all the forms together and evaluating the different amounts, and appreciate their work very, very much. Everybody else too, Melissa was involved as well. So the recommendation is to approve the new schedule of fees for our facilities, programs, and services.
Oh, that's what
And then I had some questions on 53, and you said you were going to get back, talk in this regard, because it just didn't look right between.
That is in regard to the disc golf course, and Jason, do you happen to have your packet in front of you? Anyway, I can't answer that tonight. I'd like to approve it the way we have it in the packet. What this was the disc golf course, the fee, the daily fee for rental of the disc golf course, and the rate for just the standard rate is the same as it is for the resident rate, and Director Stickney just brought up a question about that and whether those two amounts should be the same. And I looked back and saw that it was the same on our previous schedule, but I didn't have a chance to look back further and to see if there was actually two different rates there at the
Yeah, and the horse arena has two different rates.
right.
That's what threw me off.
Yeah,
Right, if we're going to do
question.
for the horse arena, let's,
Why not, yeah.
why not do it the same, you know?
Yeah, I would recommend having the non-residential rate be like the horse arena, 250.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
And I can
I think
approve
that
this.
part of the problem is discerning whether somebody that's coming in and is sponsoring a tournament is a resident or not. Virtually everyone we've ever done, I think, has been resident-based, but I would check on it and see if there was.
Yeah, so the person that's reserving it for rental needs to be the resident.
Yeah.
I'm not asking to,
250 is not a big difference.
Yeah.
no, I mean, you know, it's like,
Yeah, we'll check it.
Doesn't even.
I mean, that's all, the rest of them looks okay, you know, I mean, you could even, if you, I don't even know if you want to drop it under the special event guidelines, because it's actually, I think that would end up being more money, so
Well, I was trying to understand this page, special event rates. The horse arena is on here, but then it's also on page 50 as just 7133 Filbert rate. I was trying to understand why it's portrayed two times, but maybe just in case somebody wants to see special event rate. I mean, it's the same thing.
Same.
Do a show and a rental.
Nah, I think it was just in there twice, I know. It's how it's been, and I don't
It's
know.
been that way, yeah, I guess I never noticed it before, but I noticed it this time.
I'm confused about the category, this is very minimal, but on page 55, what is youth orient with alcohol?
Example, Sweet 16 birthday.
Oh, got it.
So it's more the youth-oriented individuals attending, and then there may be alcohol served. So that would be a youth-oriented event with alcohol.
Okay, got it.
The
Thank
youth
you.
out will be adults.
Okay.
So can we make a motion to approve the fees with the change to
The disc golf.
the disc golf to be the non-resident rate to be $250? That's the motion I'm making.
I'll second.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to, it just, I like consistency
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
All right, roll call, somebody go?
So that, you,
I made the motion.
you second?
Lisa?
Lisa second.
So other than that, the rest of it looks like a good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
All right, so I have a motion and a second with the correction on page 53. So let's go ahead, any further discussion?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go vote.
Stickney?
Yes.
Mraz?
Yes.
Brumberg?
Yes.
Montez?
Yes.
And Swenson, yes.
Okay, so it's 5-0. No abstentions, and we're going to skip D. And we'll go on to 13E, approval of acquisition of real property. This is the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's actually the bus stop, the sidewalk project, the county project. And so all of the different documents are listed: the agreement for acquisition of real property, easement for public roadway and public utilities, and the easement for temporary construction of 24 months. And so the project, like I said, goes from Central to Elm. It takes into consideration both sides of the street. It adds a bus stop right in front of the youth center playground area. The county will build a fence, a 6-foot fence, behind the bus stop to kind of separate the bus stop and the playground area along that border all the way to the corner, and then it kind of jets a little bit toward the west behind our sign. And so that's the project. It will include, at this point, a pedestrian light, like they're proposing for the electric greenway at Fair Oaks between Tempo and Sundance. It will be another pedestrian light that would allow pedestrians to cross, which would be very infrequently, but is right on Hazel. And I did send a letter to the county in regard to this because I was a little concerned about the traverse out of the district entrance and onto Hazel Avenue going southward and going to the south. And so I know that the engineers have looked at that. I didn't get a written response from them in regard to that particular issue, but I know that they have received it. So they're still in the final design stages for the project, but they are looking to start construction next year.
2020, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I believe it, they're looking at a potential up to a 2-year period, and I think it's sometime in 2020 that they're looking to begin the project.
Could you send another follow-up letter on your concerns and my concerns that you brought it up?
Sure.
I know it's probably 18 months before they're gonna start, but, so,
And so the concern that we have is when people pull out of the main and then turn left into the middle lane, there's not going to be enough room to safely get out there.
To safely get out and transition into the lane.
So I wonder if, I know the only other entry that we have, you can't turn left.
You're not supposed to.
And I'm not sure why, but I wonder if changing that to where you can now turn left would make it safer. So there would be more room to get in there. That would be a possibility since that pedestrian light is going to make it so short now. Do you think that would maybe be an option?
The problem is
There's a hill.
the problem, yeah, because of the hill, we had the neighbor across the street say that he had issues being able to get into his driveway if people were coming into that center lane at the hill. They don't, there's no visibility to see oncoming traffic that is turning left. So that's when, actually, our exit there was right turn only, and he said, you need to remind people, put up some more signs, because it's dangerous for him to
you're
turn
talking
left.
about coming from across the street out.
Yeah.
That whole,
Yeah, so if you're going
Pedestrians,
north on Hazel and you want to turn left, where our exit is, it's up there on the hill.
And-
That gentleman that lived on that other side.
In fact, in talking with the traffic engineers regarding Hazel, they were worried about the southbound traffic on Hazel not seeing the light quick enough to make a decision to slow up. So what I offered was putting a flashing light at the top of the hill to indicate that the light had switched.
Right.
So there would be a flashing yellow caution light going on at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, so the southbound traffic could see there's a light ahead, because that was not dictated by the traffic engineer's study. So I brought that to their attention. I don't know if that's carried on to the review section, but normally that's what they would have to do, is put a caution light flashing, letting them know there's a light change, because when you're coming up over the hill, you really don't know there's another light right there.
Right.
And you're gonna rear end somebody
And
or
so,
go right there.
Yeah.
I think what Jeff was saying is when you're coming out from the Little League,
Yeah.
you know, they just make that a right turn only. Is that what you're saying?
That they can't go left there?
No, I was proposing that our second exit, would it be safer to allow them to now turn left? Because that gives them a longer distance to get in the middle lane and over, since this one, the main one is now going to be shortened so much with the pedestrian light.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
Just another, just a
Well,
thought.
I mean, I guess they need
Well,
to
that's a
go
good
back.
Which
concern.
one's safest for everyone?
Right.
And that's something the traffic engineers have to consider, because that's true. I mean, what
Yeah.
you do, it's, now you turn it, instead of a one-way, it's now a three-way. So you have going, coming, and a T, it's a three-way plus pedestrians, so that is a real
So
consideration.
maybe this one would be both ways, but this one wouldn't be a left turn anymore since the distance is so much shorter now.
Well, they ought to take a look at it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really should,
that whole
because,
the pedestrian walkway scares me.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just terrifying to me. I could just,
Well,
I'm just sick to
yeah,
my stomach thinking about,
but without it, think about
All
that.
the kids running across the street.
Yeah, people run across the street, kids come across the street.
Yeah.
Remember, they were holding ropes, I remember they were holding onto a rope crossing Hazel, like, one kid
Anyway,
falls
just-
off.
Just for
Yeah,
safety of everybody.
To have a bus stop there, you have to have a pedestrian light.
Yeah.
I know.
You know, I mean, you have to, that's.
And there's nowhere else to move it, but to put it on our property there.
Yeah, and that's a problem. In fact, the consideration for the bus stop was really going to be almost toward the hill, on the hill. And at the time, when I talked to the traffic engineer, he said, yeah, we've got that taken, and they ended up putting it down where it is. Instead of putting it on top of the hill, where it would help the driver have more of a rear view, heightened view of what's coming. Now he's stuck at the bottom and has to speed up getting up. So that was another concern. Should the bus stop really be there, or should it be moved to near where the exit, the top exit is? And that bus stop kind
I'm
of
thinking
hides our sign
You
too.
really need to look at it again. Is this what they want?
Yeah, I mean, I know that they've done a lot of work, you know.
They just need,
And I
they
know
need to
that
stand on the sidewalk where that pedestrian's gonna be and just stand there for a little bit during commute hour. And see how comfortable they feel getting ready to cross that
Well,
street.
I'm more worried about
Never crossed there.
night. I'm more worried about night.
Night and fog.
Yeah. But whatever,
Yeah,
so I mean,
I would never
I think we're doing our due diligence is for them to say, for you to tell them, hey, let's go back and take a second look at this, make sure.
Yeah, before we, yeah, let's not
Let's not
be
get somebody
upset when it's
hurt.
done and go, oh.
It'd be like the popsicle sign,
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
All right, anyway, so
And
that's,
they came out, oh, the engineers looked at this, and I said, well, the engineers obviously don't drive a dually or live here.
Yeah, to make that left turn after that.
Let's put that popsicle stick right there, where it comes down the hill, and then there's all the,
it's,
Well intended, but
I'm
well, anyway, so let's
I'm
make sure that.
terrified.
Yeah, well, I am a little concerned too, you know, let's just make, it doesn't hurt to go back and look at it.
It's almost like,
Because they got 2 years before they're gonna do anything.
Yeah, but they're well along. So I think that the question is, are we
can we have,
content approving this?
can we have their, I mean, because it's been a while since I've been to Caltrans meetings when they used to do the workshops and show us what was happening. This one, we're just getting some drawings. In fact, do we actually have the drawings
I don't
of
think
what
we have a
the?
drawing. We
Yeah,
don't have
we've
that.
seen the drawings.
The fence looks, the fence
The
looks
fence looks
nice.
good.
Yeah, it looks really
But does it
nice.
have the drawings of the sign? The stoplight, the crosswalk?
Yeah, everything is in
Everything.
those plans, yeah.
So we can,
I guess it's hard to see when you're looking at an 8x10 drawing versus what it looks like out there on the road.
It's a lot easier to put down on a piece of paper than it is to stand there and make your dash to the plus.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because they would certainly time the lights appropriately, just like they do now. I mean, as long as you're patient, there's a goodly amount of time to come out and get back into traffic.
I get that, but
The
the
time
traffic
that
is
is
the
difficult
drivers.
is when you pull out at a time that's not between lights. Okay, that's the real issue. Because if you've waited until the gap, the natural gap, when the lights hit, you can get out pretty easily, in my estimation. But when you try to get out and merge in at a time other than that is when you're taking your life.
well, we had an accident there, right? That's where Doug got hit. Is that where you got hit? That's where.
Coming out of the youth center, right?
Yeah, that was different, but
We've had a couple of soccer.
there are accidents,
I
definitely.
don't
I'm
know.
more worried about the
It doesn't show
pedestrians.
that.
It doesn't show what we're talking about.
No,
All right, so what's the motion?
the topo.
So
I'm very nervous.
where are we? Do we have a motion, a second to approve this yet or not?
No, we're just finishing the staff report. I don't think that we had a motion, so.
And I'll entertain a motion to approve the project as presented with, subject to additional comments made by the district to the lighting aspect.
Like putting a light at the top, you mean?
Yeah. I think it's called flashing caution light.
Yeah, they got them there right by the fire station.
Yeah. whenever it's activated.
And actually, there's another one there,
There's one.
further down on Greenback.
Yeah.
By Winco.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's one by Winco, there's one further down by the
Right.
other fire station.
yeah, and they're triggered by pressure plates. So, in fact, that's maybe what they have to do is they're put a pressure plate on our grounds to trip it, so that maybe the light does change. If we exit and there's a tripping pressure to the light, maybe it'll stop the light so we can get out.
I'm not
All right, I'll
a
second that.
traffic engineer.
I'll
He's
second
allowed
it.
is classified as
Is
an
there a
F1
motion and a
category.
second? And do you want, what did you want added? Did you want?
Approval is subject to the consideration for additional lights.
The flashing
Flashing
caution light.
caution light at the top of the
Top
hill
of the hill.
And
To warn drivers that the light is.
for southbound traffic.
and what about getting a second, another blessing from the engineers?
But, well, they would have to review that. As soon as they put the caution light, they're gonna have to review everything else.
All right.
So it trips,
Yeah.
it trips them.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion.
So the motion is as stated in the staff report with the addition of the written suggestion to add caution lights
At
at the top of the hill.
At the
Or
top of the hill.
southbound.
For southbound traffic.
Yeah. So that's, you know, that's a written suggestion. And I'm absolutely happy to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't change your
It doesn't change.
documents that you're gonna.
Yeah, it doesn't change any of the documents, it just is a consideration.
Yeah, we would like to.
That's true.
And then I think we're expecting a response back from them too.
Yeah, and I think that's the question, you know, is it something that the board would like to delay a month? And I say that with a little bit of hesitation
I don't
because
think so.
I know how hard they've worked to get this on the agenda for the last 3 months.
No,
They were hoping to go in, I think, November, December, and January, and, you know, things happen, and everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And so now we're in February. However, I think
However, safety is safety.
I know. I'm
yeah,
like,
But I don't think it's gonna, it shouldn't impede, I mean, we're accepting their documents as presented. So we're not changing them, we're asking them to consider a caution light, which is one of the main concerns of the,
but a written
He's allowed to
suggestion
safety-
is just a
safety
suggestion, they
committee,
don't have
yeah.
to do anything, so.
yeah. And it's something that
they
probably the fire
certainly want
department
it to be
considers.
safe, believe me.
Yeah, and the fire department would-
They don't want to do anything that's not, you know, perfectly safe. You know, and I don't know how much, you know, they've considered all this. Honestly, I'm not even sure if maybe they don't have, you know, some type of caution light. You know, I haven't looked specifically for that. So,
And I guess the other kind of side issue is that when people come out of there anyway, are they going to, is it, they can turn right or left in the future?
out of where?
Out of, if they're coming, like our people or anybody coming out of the Little League game area, they're coming out of there, right? And there's a bus stop there, and they're gonna take a left, and there's gonna be a bus in front of them. Should we, is that possible?
Oh, yeah.
It's a light, here we have a right turn only, is that a right turn only there?
On Linda Lane?
Go to the parking lot.
Going out of the parking lot, let's say you've gone to see your child play
From the
baseball,
youth
and
center.
you're coming out of the youth center, and there's a bus there, and you're gonna make a left.
You don't make a left when the lights are on. It's gotta be when it's safe.
Well, I know, but if it's a right turn only, I mean, have they considered that?
Yeah, I don't know honestly what the traffic engineer would consider, you know, full.
Maybe they should come and do a presentation.
Yeah, we need a presentation
We
from
need
the
to have
traffic
a
engineer.
conversation with them. I mean, I get they've done a lot of work and we need to move forward, but I'm uneasy about us validating, I mean, for the sake of time, there, when we still have some questions and some concerns, some very valid concerns, and some possible solutions. But if you put something that's a suggestion, that's all it is. Everything else can be moved forward, and something happens, and I'd like to be able to sleep at night, knowing that we did our diligence. And
Right.
I think if they come and they answer some of our questions that we all brought up, and the staff as well. So, I mean, I would hate to say that we have to postpone it, but I'd like to hear from them.
The diagrams in here don't show us where the light is at.
No.
Is it before our driveway, after our driveway?
No, it shows exactly the location.
Not in what's in the packet today.
Okay. Yeah,
It just shows
the original plans do show it. It's in essence just north of where the bus stop is going to be, which is right in front of our playground. So it's just a few feet to the north of the
Wow.
And
That's
I
like right at
understand
our
that
driveway
there
going
be,
out.
you
No,
know,
it's still,
It's still a little bit of room.
there's still a distance, but
it's easy to
That's
put it
why
on
I said
paper,
might
but
be a three-way deal.
we're here, we live here, we use it, we're familiar with it. They're not here, and they don't necessarily, no different than the sign downtown. You know, if they lived in the area, or they talked to residents who, they might have gotten a different perspective. And I think that's what we need to share with them, at least I would feel more comfortable.
Well, that's why I was suggesting now they turned it into a three-way. One-way, two-way, exiting is a three-way, maybe have to put a stoplight at the head on opposite the street to hold traffic so that those cars can turn to the left and turn to the right without impeding
It'd be a
their
lot more
turn.
expensive if we move forward and then we had to make changes.
It is.
Yeah.
all right, well, how about this? I will invite them to come to the March meeting to make a presentation.
Right.
We'll put this on the March meeting agenda as well for approval.
So that
And
we're-
then if there are any questions, or we feel that for some reason there needs to be additional work done before the approval, then we can delay again. Otherwise, we'll have it on next month's agenda for approval with a presentation from the county. Does that sound
Yeah,
good?
Thank you, Greg.
and they would appreciate it anyway.
I started thinking about when the Challenger took off, and they said, oh, yeah, it gets cold, you guys can take off, it's perfectly safe. And then the seals,
Yeah.
so, you know, I mean, engineers say, oh, it's perfectly safe, except if you're riding in the rocket.
Well, you know how many times I've hit that downtown sign?
Yeah, well, anyway, so I mean,
Have you? I've hit the curb, yeah, I have a truck and people are coming at me. I have to move. Yeah.
anyway, we're just, if you wanna write it off as that we're lay people, we're not civil or
Yeah.
We want to do our due diligence, to keep our public and our community safe.
Yep.
We see things that they don't necessarily see, because we're here and we use the facility and we see the landscape, so.
Okay,
Okay, then I withdraw my motion.
okay, sounds good. All right, so we'll send that letter tomorrow.
Right, so then we'll put that on items for next time.
That shouldn't stop them, because they probably have it down to the numbers in it.
All right, so then we're gonna put E back on, we'll make it A when we, all right, 13F, approval of constructing ADA pathway at the youth center. And that needs to be done no matter what, anyway,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just felt the landscape like Cochran, a bit too high.
Concrete's expensive.
I move we approve the,
Well, no, I did keep this.
oh, he's gonna give a report,
You
or?
wanna give a report on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to indicate that we solicited 3 bids, and one wasn't able to get it back in time. So we actually received 2 bids for the work at Youth Center Park. This is our playground area that we're looking to renovate this year. And we knew that with this project, we were going to do 2 ADA projects with it. The first is a sidewalk that goes up to the baseball field from the current sidewalk that's down by the building.
Right.
And the second goes from the parking lot stalls to the middle of the basketball court and playground to provide handicap access to both of those facilities. It also includes a ramp down into the playground. It includes a sidewalk that goes all the way around the playground, much like the partial sidewalk that we did at Norma Hamlin, that kind of went around the backside, allows people to sit. There's going to be a couple benches associated with it as well. And then the add alternate was to tear out the one section that currently dipped in because there was a big tree there. That tree has since died, and so we felt like it would be a great time to add a few additional square feet to that playground, which will allow us to have an easier time with fall zones, and if we choose a little larger playground, we can accommodate it also. So we felt it was well worth the $12,000 that would be an add alternate to make that playground area a little
Are we doing
larger.
anything to the material that's in the playground?
That's just, will be part of the playground
Okay.
project. It'll all be cleared out and redone.
So it doesn't matter what it is now, or?
No, it's just wood fiber now, and more than likely, for this size of playground, we would go back with wood fiber.
All right,
All right,
so can I get a motion to,
Sharon, you're on.
Oh. I move we approve the agreement with Exclusive Exteriors to construct an ADA pathway at the youth center park in the amount of $52,500.
I'll second.
a motion and a second? And that's going to be this fiscal year?
Yes, and we're authorizing the district administrator to execute the agreement as well.
Certainly. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Go ahead and vote.
Brumberg,
Yes.
Montez,
Yes.
Swenson, yes. Stickney,
Yes.
Moraz.
Yes.
All right, so we're on to 13G, approval and date of the workshop. You want to talk about this real briefly, Greg?
Well, we just wanted to set up a date to really look at our capital improvement plans. This is something that we a lot of times do in May, at a second meeting in May, the end of May. This year we want to do it a little early because tonight we have an item that is going to discuss the other financing mechanisms, and then in March we were looking at bringing to the board a possible decision on what we might want to do in regard to a community survey. So this particular item is to establish that date, which would be not next Thursday, but the following Thursday, the last Thursday in February. And we would discuss all three projects in all three areas, meaning the capital improvement, the capital replacement, and the ADA plan projects that are on our list.
And then you're going to have all of those lists, and then if there's something else we want to add.
Yeah, we can discuss it that evening, and
Oh, okay.
So if there's anything you really desire, I mean,
honestly, if you have some things, just
Yeah.
email me.
all right.
And,
Okay.
there's no reason that we can't just add it and discuss it that night. So,
Okay. All right.
And you're supposed to have this list for everybody to look at. It'll be like a regular board packet, so you'll have it
Yeah,
at least,
we'll
hopefully,
put it out next
hopefully a
Friday.
week ahead of time.
So then I move that the board hold a workshop to discuss the prioritization of the projects on February 28, 2019 at 6:30 PM.
I'll second that.
All right, is that good for, that date work for everybody?
Yep.
All right. Staff too? Usually, if there's something you want to build or whatever, now would be the time to add that to it. But I guess you've already done that.
Wait a minute, we haven't, we don't, 229? We don't have a.
No, 228.
28.
28.
28, okay,
Wednesday.
It's the last day.
okay, February, yeah. I
Right.
thought I heard 229, sorry.
Well, you could hear it.
It's 2019.
It's like, we don't have 29.
You can come on.
Well, you do every 4 years, but
Not leap year.
not this
Did I
year.
say 29?
I thought you did.
All right, so does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. 6:30? And that's gonna be the only, that'll probably be the only thing on the agenda then? I mean, it'll be a
Yeah.
pretty full agenda.
Mhm.
All right. So, we're all good then. And we'll,
Can we just say all in favor? We don't have to vote.
No, there's no votes.
Did anyone do a motion? No one did a
No,
motion.
no, there's no vote.
I motion.
It's just.
Yeah,
I
there's a
move.
motion.
Yeah, she
I moved.
motioned.
All right, all right.
And I seconded.
Oh my gosh, I missed that, sorry.
All right.
Who seconded it?
I did.
All right, thank you.
Her mind is on ice cream.
What?
Birthday,
Oh,
daughter with the birthday.
no, I just wanted to make sure I could make the meeting. That involved in it.
Okay, are we going to vote?
All right. Yeah, vote. All in favor?
Erica?
Erica.
Oh, are we doing
We're doing
a,
a vote.
Just do, let's vote.
oh, okay.
All in favor?
All in favor,
Favor.
right?
Yeah.
Aye.
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 5-0. All right.
Is that me that usually says that, all in favor?
You can do
Oh,
that
I
if it's
thought
not
it was
money.
Mike that said that. Am I supposed to be doing that?
Well, it's not fast enough. You'll-
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
All right.
next
All
item?
right, now we got 13H, approve a date and time for the Brown Act tomorrow.
So, we've had this traditionally every couple of years, and last year, if you remember, we were going to have one, and then we decided that because it's an election year, we were gonna wait until the board was elected. So now we are doing that, and we've set up a time, 1 hour before the March 14th board meeting, to do the Brown Act discussion. We think we can get it done in about an hour, especially since we've had significant training in the past. So it's to answer any questions, and David will go over all the basics of those three, of basic board governance, the Brown Act, and the Public Records Act.
Has it changed since the last time?
There may have been a couple small changes. I can't think of any just offhand. There have been some changes to the requirements for districts and websites, which are part of that. And the main thing is that you provide your agenda on the front page of your website, which we have for quite some time now. But I think it's going to be required possibly at the end of this year for everybody. But we've done it for some time now.
All right, so that worked for everybody, an hour early?
For now it does.
Yep.
I know, I was gonna say that.
Yeah, things might change by March, because I've got a lot of stuff.
Is the district going to supply sandwiches? or-
Yeah, we'll provide something to eat.
Oh, well, then I'm here.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
yeah, so you decide which way you want, pizza or sandwiches or whatever.
Do I need to move that as well? I move that we hold
Yeah.
our Brown Act workshop to discuss the board governance and Public Records Act on March 14th from 5:30 to 6:30 before the regular March meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Any further discussion? Okay, then we'll go ahead and vote on that.
You vote?
Yeah, now here's where you say all in favor.
Oh, I just say all in favor?
Yeah.
All in favor?
All in favor.
Aye.
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 Yeah, you don't have to do roll call if it's not money.
And you can,
You can do it that way.
I've not been doing as a secretary.
well,
You're doing a great job. You got it.
when it's just a vote, that it doesn't involve money, then the other one, it's a little
It's a roll.
slow.
I'm realizing now I never had.
All right.
All right, 13I, acceptance to the investment pool fund.
Okay, this is something we do every year. It's basically, I've included the investment fund portfolio from the county, and we just simply approve it, and we accept it and file it, the 2019 investment policy from the county.
Not like we can object to it.
I know. So I move that the board, oops, I'm on the wrong one. I move that we accept and file the County of Sacramento 2019 investment policy for the pooled investment fund.
I'll second that.
Got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Then we'll go ahead and vote.
Stickney?
Yes.
Moraz?
Yes.
Brumberg?
Yep.
Montez?
Yes.
And Swenson, yes.
Okay. Then we're on to the gentleman has arrived.
This is survey.
Yeah.
So this next item is, it is with SCI. It's not the actual presentation that Blair's going to make, but this is for approval of the proposal from SCI to provide consulting services to update our park development fee. Every 5 years, the district has to update its park development fee and actually issue a report, a findings report for the first 5 years. And so that's what this proposal is for. The money that is associated with this agreement can come directly out of the Park Development Fee 332I fund, and so that's how it will be funded. So staff's recommendation is to approve the proposal.
I move we approve the proposal from SCI Consulting to provide consulting services for updating the park impact fee nexus study and completing the 5-year findings report.
I'll second.
I have a motion, a second. 2 questions. Well, we already budgeted for this, correct?
Yeah.
It's actually not budgeted for in the technical sense. It will actually either be, the funds will move from the park development fee to the general fund, and then the claim will be written from the general fund. So it's not really a budget per se item, because it's not anything hitting OLAD or the general fund.
It comes out of the
It
park
just comes out of the park development fee money.
We to anticipate.
And does it have to come out of the park, or can it come out of
I guess you could choose to fund it out of whatever category you would want to, but it's directly associated with the fund, so,
Yeah, because you have to do the study that provides the funds for the park development.
yeah, I feel like it actually should be
The fund is
more out of the fund.
study.
I like everything to come out of OLAD, but that's fine. I can live with something else. Because I just look at it, we're taking away from developing
I
parks.
know.
Either way, the money is there for us in OLAD or in the park development fee account. So it's probably more flexible to have OLAD money rather than park development fee money. So it's
'Cause that's
better to take
restricted,
it out of the 332I and have more flexibility in your OLAD account than otherwise. So I think that what we
So you are
should,
saying that my logic is okay?
well, I'm actually saying that your logic is fine,
But it's best to
but
do it the
it's
other way,
best to take it out of 332I.
because you want to leave the flexibility for other things in there.
All right, that's fine. So we have a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Any further discussion? Then let's go and vote.
Okay, Moraz?
Yes.
Brumberg?
Yes.
Montez?
Yes.
Swenson, yes. Stickney?
Yes. Okay, then 13K. Presentation by Blair as Oz. Yes. Okay. From SCI.
All right, so a little background on this is, now that all of our master plans have been completed, we are in the process of looking at both financing mechanisms to fund the projects identified in those master plans, and to conduct a community survey to find out what information we need to make a decision, whether that is something that we want to do. And it's honestly what the community wants to do. So We've invited Blair tonight to make a presentation for us and talk about some of the financing methods that weren't discussed when John Isom came in January. So there were some other options for us, and Blair's going to summarize those things and then answer any questions that the board might have in regard to that.
Thank you, Greg, and good evening. Again, my name is Blair Oz with SCI Consulting Group, and really pleased to be here. My colleague Susan Barnes, who is your levy administrator, was also planning on being here tonight, but she had some car trouble today, so she's, and I was concerned because I had another meeting in North Highlands Recreational Park District. I was concerned about being able to be here timely for your meeting, so I'm glad that it all worked out. And before I begin, just thank you for approving the proposal that was before you just here a few minutes ago. That's a really was a really important project. So that's going to be a project not only with your district, but 7 other recreation and park districts will be updating all of those plans together and updating those plans and bringing those forward. I'm really pleased that that was really a big milestone that your district and the other 7s took about 8 years ago, because it hasn't generated significant amounts of money. You're not really a growth district of some sort, but it has generated quite a bit. That surprisingly, after a period of time, it does generate quite a bit of. It can generate quite a bit of money. Again, I won't spend too much time just introducing our firm, but just maybe just a little bit. We've been serving public agencies for 34 years, and we've been serving your district for I don't know how long, probably quite a ways. But really, the mission of our firm is really, the work that we're going to talk about today. The mission of our firm is really to help public agencies establish new revenues or increase their revenues for new services, budget shortfalls, capital improvements, new facilities, what have you. So we help you establish new taxes, assessments, fees, charges, to be able to establish those revenues. And so what I was going to just go through today is, since we work with so many recreation and park districts, we understand your needs, and what I'd like to do is maybe go through some of the three funding mechanisms that you can consider as you're going through this deliberative process to gather more information about how you can generate more funds for improvements and perhaps services. Advancing it, sorry, thank you. So before we begin, I like to just take a moment, and as we're talking about these different funding mechanisms, and I think what we'll specifically talk about, and again, I'm here today to be at your pleasure and answer any questions that you have about park and recreation finance, the district finance, and so I can answer any questions that you have. But I think the purpose of this meeting is just to outline some of the issues, opportunities, challenges, pitfalls with various funding mechanisms, and then just take a lot of your questions. But before I begin, when we're talking about the mechanisms that we'll talk about today is what I call local funding measures. So really, it's so the district certainly has other funding sources. You have your own fees, you have grant programs, you have property tax increment that you receive. But what we're talking today is going out to the community and saying, here's what we would like to fund, here's our budget problem, here's our project that we'd like to fund, here's the new services we'd like to propose, what have you, and asking them to financially support that effort in either a tax, an assessment, a fee, or a charge, okay? And that when you are going through that effort of a local funding measure, there's what I identify as 3 hurdles that you have to get over. And and those hurdles exist for any one of these types of funding measures that we'll talk about today. The first one is a financial analysis or some financial justification. So I know Isom and Associates was here a couple board meetings ago, and they did some of that already. So what is your bonding capacity, and how much are the capital facilities you can approve? So you have to do all that financial analysis. A lot of times that involves an analysis of your tax base, all of the property owners, your assessed value and such. And sometimes there's a financial justification, So that's one big hurdle, and we can help with that. The next hurdle is the legal hurdle. So because these are funding mechanisms that are borne out in the government code mostly, they're borne out in the government code. There's legal processes for how you go about establishing the new tax assessment fee or charge, and there's procedural requirements on how you go about that. And so there's a whole legal process. And lastly, there's a political process that in one form or a fashion, regardless of what type of funding measure, you need to get political support, and political support mostly in these cases are going to be voter support. Okay? And our firm can help you with that as well. So that's really the work that we do, is help you not just with the financial analysis, not just with the legal process, but the political process as well, and getting over all of those hurdles so that you can successfully establish a new funding source. Go to the next slide. So the top 4 are the ones that we're going to talk about. I won't talk too much about the last one, but let's just go through these.
And Blair?
Yes.
The reason why you won't talk about the last one so much is we aren't a growth district. So we receive very few monies when it comes to the Quimby fees. I think that the last couple of years we really haven't even increased hardly at all. And park development fees, we received a small amount over the last probably 6 years, and they were mostly projects that were previously entitled, meaning previously approved by the county, and now they were just building those homes. So now in Orangevale, we don't have as many of those projects going forward. So our park development impact fee program, although will bring some money in, won't bring as much as we've had over even the last few years.
Exactly. So the Quimby ordinance is already established, and it really doesn't need to be changed. If I recall correct, I reviewed it a number of years ago. There's not much that needs to be changed about it. And so that's already established. And then the development impact fee program is the work that that proposal. So what we're going to do is just update that fee program. And it could be out of that effort. I can't recall specifically what your exact development impact fee is. It could go from, say, $7,500 to $8,500. And so that effort could generate a little bit more fees on new homes. But that's really just addressing the impact of new development. So the first one is the benefit assessment under the Landscape and Lighting Act, and you're very familiar with that because you have one. So as you're aware with the benefit assessment, you're aware of the engineer's report that's required annually and some of the stuff. So I would characterize the first one, that's certainly an option for you, but I would characterize that in terms of those hurdles that I talked about. I would characterize the first one as the financial hurdle is very, 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 very large. It requires a very robust engineer's report and a lot of financial analysis a lot of detail on what projects you're looking to fund and when, what type of services you're going to fund. There's a lot of limitations on that. And again, so a lot of financial analysis and rigor, and this actually requires that that rigorous engineer's report. So very high. And as I'm sure you're aware, with the assessment, the Proposition 218 assessments are always under legal scrutiny and so with that, the legal hurdle is very high as well, and some of that has to do with the financial analysis and how you design the new assessment. So there's a big legal hurdle with that as well. But the political hurdle, the support that you need, as you're aware, is you only need 50% support, a weighted majority of the assessment ballots that are returned in a ballot proceeding. So if you recall, if you were to go forward with an assessment measure, you mail out a ballot that specifically says what their proposed assessment is going to be for that property owner, and you receive all the ballots in the ballot proceeding, and you put a stack on one side that say yes and a stack on the one side that say no. And the vote isn't, you don't get one vote per property owner or one vote per acre, it's one vote per assessment dollar. And so you just add the assessment dollars here and the assessment dollars there, and if you have more assessment dollars that say yes than not, it's approved. But the real takeaway here is that the threshold of support is only 50%. So, and I think the Proposition 218 and the state legislature, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association was involved in this as well. The thought was, well, if you have to go through all of this financial rigor, and there's a lot of restrictions on the use of the proceeds, and there's a real an elaborate legal process, two big hurdles. The political hurdle we can accept as something lower, which is, majority support. Okay? But that is an option to you. With the benefit assessment, not only can it fund capital improvements, but it can also fund landscape and lighting services, park maintenance services as well. And so there's a little bit more use there. The next one is a special tax measure. Now, with the special tax measure, going back to the hurdles, the financial hurdle is actually relatively low. So there's no legal requirement of an engineer's report or documentation on how you're going to expend it or how you determine the tax. It's actually quite low. Now, I'm not saying that because that hurdle's low that you don't do some of that effort, because the community is going to want to see some of that financial analysis and your financial plans and everything else. So it's still somewhat required, but it's actually quite low. If you recall, like with the benefit assessment, you have different rates for different land uses, and sometimes when you do assessments, you have this different zones, so different areas of the district might pay different rates, and very, very complicated. Where here, you have a lot more latitude in the rate that you charge, and also from the financial perspective, with the special tax, you'd be able to use that not only for capital improvements, but you can also use that for services, recreational programs, and everything. So that actually has the broadest use of the proceeds. With a special tax generally, you could use it on anything that any of your efforts, you could fund, that special tax could be funded that effort.
I have a question on this.
Of course.
So we can not only use the money to build paths, buildings, whatever, purchase property, some of it can be set aside for the maintenance of these items or not?
Yes.
Okay,
It said services, capital and services.
okay.
Yeah, so in terms of the use of the proceeds, that's the best one out of the list, is just the use of the proceeds, yeah.
What is the 50%, 2/3, what?
Right, so low financial hurdle, low legal hurdle, but a high political hurdle. Voters, it's actually 2/3 of the support of the voters that participate in the election. And again, with Proposition 218, the state legislature, Howard Jarvis, I think as they're putting this package all together, they said, yeah, if you're going to propose something and you get 2/3 of all the voters in your district say yes, yeah, we don't need all that financial rigor and detail, and you can have some flexibility there. If you can just get 2/3 to support it, sure. So that's really somewhat the trade-off there. I'm going to jump down to number 4, the Melrose Community Facilities District. I want you to think of that as just a variant of the special tax. So the special tax measure, Government Code Section 50075, says that you can call for an election, and that's district-wide election for the services and improvements that we talked about. But you can also create a community facilities district, and despite the title, it's not only can it fund services, facilities and capital improvements, but it can also do services, landscape and then park maintenance, trail maintenance, even recreation. You can even fund recreation programs. But the difference between the special tax and I'll use the term CFD special tax, the difference is that one, you're actually creating a financing district, similar to like your assessment district. You're actually drawing a boundary, and most likely for your district you'd be doing it for the district-wide boundaries. But you're drawing a boundary, you're forming a financing district, and the special tax is actually land secured, meaning that if you were to take loans or bond off of that tax stream, that's actually funding mechanisms that's very easy to do. So lenders actually like to see that type of financing, and so that can become attractive.
And how does that differ again, Blair, from the special tax in regard to the financing part of it that you were just talking about?
Well, with the special tax, you can go secure a loan and use special tax proceeds to fund the debt service on that loan, but you would need district collateral to be able to do that. Maybe like a certificate of participation or something, and to be able to fund that. It's just a little bit easier to bond or to issue loans with the community facilities district.
Because it's based on the land.
Right. It's you actually with the CFD, you actually issue a notice of special tax lien. You actually place a lien on the property, and so that that lien carries the weight of their regular property taxes. So it actually is kept very priority. So since it's given such priority, the lenders like to see that. Anyway, and one other little note is that, and I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but a special tax measure, there are some limitations in terms of your ability to charge different rates to different land uses in the district. There's a concept of unit, and it's somewhat called into question right now. There's some court cases that are circling, but they're under that special tax. The special tax has to be uniform across different land uses in the district. And I don't want to go too much into the weeds unless you want to. With the Melrose Community Facilities District, you don't have that restriction. You have great leeway in how you structure it. I mean, you could say I'll exaggerate to illustrate the point. Vacant property is going to pay $1,000, apartments at $500, and single-family homes $1. I mean, you could do that, and with no legal consequences, maybe political consequences, but you have a very great leeway in this, how you structure the special tax, and so sometimes that can be beneficial. And mostly park and recreation districts would do the special tax. However, we have done community facility district special tax for the Mountain Recreation Conservation Authority in Los Angeles. They've done 2 at one time, and then they did another series of 2. So they've done 4 measures. 2 of them were done simultaneously. And then we also did one for the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District. They had an assessment similar to yours, but it was actually had a sunset for 20 years. And so that when they came up to that sunset, they said, because of the legal issues with Prop 218 and having to go through those big hurdles, let's do a special tax, and let's do it with this community facilities district. Okay. Lastly is the general obligation bond measure that Isom and Associates, I know, has presented to you as well. So the financial analysis of that is quite high. You have to do quite a bit of work and to determine that analysis. In terms of the financial analysis and the use, with general obligation bond measures, you are restricted to just capital projects. So it depends. So one of the top questions here is you just need to really determine what is it you're looking to fund. And if it's just capital projects, then certainly consider a general obligation bond measure. But if you're looking that you might want to fund recreation programs, or you might want to fund, put some more money towards park maintenance, then the benefit assessment or the special tax measure are going to be able to fund that. So it does have that one limitation. The legal hurdle, again, I don't know how to characterize this. The legal hurdle is quite high because there's a lot of bond documents, because you're effectively with the general obligation bond measure, you're taking out a mortgage, and so you've all taken out mortgages, and you know how complicated that is and all the documents that you have to do. So that there is there's some legal process there as well, and a lot of a big team to be able to do that. And with the general obligation bond, since it's funding only capital improvements and facilities, and you're essentially you're financing those, so you're essentially taking out a mortgage for those projects, where the benefit and the benefit assessment and the special tax, either a CFD special tax or the regular special tax, you could use that income stream to do what we call pay-as-you-go projects. So you just say, every year we're going to take $250,000 and just put it into capital projects, and just do every year we're just doing project after project, and you do those projects pay as you go. You do that slowly every year, and you're not financing anything. It's just you're just using that income stream to dedicate some of that to projects. And so that, depending upon, when you look at your capital project list, do you want those projects financed and you want those done all at one time in a short period of time, or are they projects that you possibly could slowly do over time? And then the question is, do you want to finance them or not? Now, you can finance them under the benefit assessment or the special tax. And again, when I was talking about the CFD special tax, if you really did want to consider some small financing of some of the improvements, that would probably be the option to go. And again, That one is just a little bit more complicated, but the voters don't really see some of that detail. And the threshold, the political hurdle for a general obligation bond measure is high as well. It's 2/3 of the registered voters within the district. So those are really I'd say three, with special tax being, two different variants. But those are really the local funding measures that are available to park and recreation districts. I think, can I take some, do you have any questions at this point? Yeah.
One of the things from the presentation on the general obligation bond was the concept of doing money over time, right? You had it, like a 5-year option. We were looking at chunking it out over a 20-year period or something.
You would set aside so many dollars and you say we have to accomplish those within 3 years, I think is what it is. And then you could go back and say, we want to do another.
Offering.
Right, yeah.
And you wouldn't have to go back because you'd already said.
You would approve the whole amount and then you would chunk it. If I remember, that was just my
Because
request.
generally, you may not even have the internal resources to do all the projects at once.
Right.
So you would issue the bonds in increments.
Increments, that's it.
And then if you decided at the third increment you didn't want to do, you didn't have to do it. Is that the concept?
That's what, what I remember is we would, because there's no way we would have the resources to do all the capital projects we want to do for our master plan.
Yeah.
Now, how would that concept work with the special tax or the CFD? Is that, because you just said you could do pay-as-you-go, but kind of pay-as-you-go with like a big pay-as-we-go chunk here, little one here. Does it have to be consistently?
Yeah, just when you're forming the community facilities district, you would identify those projects that you wanted to finance, and you'd do some calculations on what that would look like, and then you'd calculate the special tax. A portion of that would fund the debt service on that proposed payment, and then just like similar to the general obligation bond measure, you'd retain a financial advisor then to issue bonds off of that income stream.
But do we have to go back each time to the voters to approve another?
No.
You approve the whole thing,
It's all done at once, yeah.
and then we just fund it as needed.
Right.
Once again, your 2/3 required for passage to be the special tax
And the general obligation, yeah.
And the CFD too.
And the Melrose too. So it's only the benefit assessment is the one that's got the lowest threshold of support. Interestingly, there are some constitutional amendments that are being considered right now to lower that threshold to 55%.
Like school bonds.
Right. School bonds are the only public agency that actually has a lower threshold than 2/3. They have their threshold 55%. So there's been a lot of interest over the last 7-8 years to try to get that lower threshold available to other types of public agencies for different types of projects, and it has failed even with democratically controlled 2/3 of the House of the state legislature. They still haven't been able to do that. So I'm not optimistic that will happen, but it's possible.
All right, so
Yeah.
3 of the 4 that we're looking at take 2/3.
Right.
And
And the benefit assessment takes 50%. Now, and here's something important. Why don't you can we go to the next slide and we've sort of went through a lot of this, but this is just a comparison of special tax GEO-bond measure and benefit assessment. I think the one thing I wanted to highlight is that who votes? The top line there, who votes? So it's registered voters versus property owners with the benefit assessment. So if you're considering one of these measures, you need to survey property owners for a benefit assessment. You need to survey registered voters for the other one. And it could be that, do you have a lot of multifamily apartments units in your?
There's some down in the south.
Okay. So it's mostly single-family homes, okay?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah. Yes. Melrose would be in this column here. Yeah, is everything lines up there, yeah.
So when it says the election venue, the polling booth, it still has mail-in ballots count, correct?
Yeah, we probably should clarify that, the election venue for a special tax or GeoBond measure. Traditionally, it's at the polling booth, but you can do an all-mail ballot proceeding. And again, we'd have to really be engaged with you and do all the work to be able to make proper findings and recommendations. So what I'm recommending now is just in general. So I don't know if it specifically work in your circumstance, but what we typically find is if you go in November with a regular general election, sometimes there's candidates on the ballot or other tax measures on the ballot, and so there's a lot of confusion there. Or there's a lot of issues on the ballot. Sometimes those candidate issues and the other measures can be helpful to your cause. Sometimes they can damage your cause. Sometimes you might get tagged with something that's not, the voters don't like on that ballot, and your measure gets negative votes as a result. So sometimes you might consider an all-mail ballot process, and you have to work with the county and the timing to make sure that you can do that. But instead, you would actually just have an all-mail ballot election, and you isolate your election, the timing frame, and the voters are only seeing your election. They get an all-mail ballot, and you get 30 days to return that ballot. So that's a little bit different. So, but that's a good point to bring out, that's certainly an option as well.
And if it's separate from a regular election, it's probably more costly to the district.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that make it probably more expensive.
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily. And I would like to give you some norms. I'd couch it not necessarily, but man, every county is different. Every election is different. We're just always surprised where we get some costs back from the county, and it's higher than we expected or lower than we expected. So cost of the election is certainly consideration. The timing of the election is a consideration. What other issues might help your measure or hurt your measure? And so there's a lot of issues surrounding just the timing of your measure that if you were to venture forward in this effort, you need a consultant to help you really establish a timeline and a strategy and a path.
That's what the,
Survey.
so before we decide what one
Right.
we want to find it, is the public interested in us doing some of the stuff?
Right,
Right.
financing some way.
Right.
That's going to be.
Yeah, to see where we are with public opinion.
Yeah, so in terms of the different phases, we usually like to say, the first phase is what we call a feasibility analysis.
Right.
And really it's really just sitting down at the table, rolling up your sleeves, and just starting to talk about everything and anything about this proposed measure. What are you trying to fund, and how much? What are the services, the budget shortfalls, the capital projects? What's the list? You want to talk about these various funding mechanisms. You want to talk about the timing of the election. What other what have been your successes in the past? What have been some of your failed measures in the past and why? If you went forward with something, who are going to be your supporters? Who are going to be your opponents and why? And you do some preliminary financial analysis so you can get a sense as to how much would a typical homeowner have to pay for whatever you're proposing. And you have to do that financial analysis. And then you can take that work and compare that to other recreation and park districts and their measures, and to see if you're in the ballpark. Because if you're saying, we're going to propose a special tax of $200 per year, I'd say, hey, don't even bother with the survey, just end it here, because that's not going to happen. It's not going to work. And because I've got evidence, historical evidence that shows it. And that out of that effort too, there might be various plans and different associated rates that you want the survey to test. But that's really that first process, and a kickoff meeting and a lot of effort. And out of that effort, you should end up coming out with what I just very simply, call the plan. So it's, what's the plan to solve the budget shortfall, fund the new services, fund the capital improvement plan, or a new facility, whatever it is. What's that plan? And how much does it cost annually? And so how much do you need annually to accomplish that plan? And then what would that result in for a typical homeowner? And sometimes you have variants of the plan. You might, one plan might end up being, say, $50 per single family home. And you say, well, because of these other measures, maybe we should also look at a plan where it's a little bit lower and we can test different rates. Maybe we don't need this amount every year. We could have another plan at this amount. And it really depends upon your plan. I mean, maybe, and again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but that's your plan, and you are governing this district, and you're very engaged, and so you've been elected to carry forward this mission, and so that's your plan. But what's smart is to take that plan or those plans and really go to the voters or maybe the property owners and just say, what do you think? And you do that with a survey before, because you think you might understand how much they would be willing to support financially, that they like skate parks, or they want an aquatics facility, or out of that whole project list, do you really know what their priorities are or not? And so what you want to do is to take your plan and your project list, your proposed, what you find is a priority, and see what the voters think. And then based upon that information, then take that information from the survey and then craft a measure that aligns with what their priorities are and what they would support, so that you can craft the measure for success. Because if you go into a local funding measure, our recommendation, and I'm stating the obvious, you go in it prepared to win. And so that takes some of these early steps, this feasibility analysis, do the survey, and do some of that, maybe even some early stakeholder outreach, but make sure that you go in it to win. There's way too many public agencies and districts that will just very quickly say, yeah, let's fund this, we'll ask them for $50 and we'll just see what happens, and then they fail. And I'm telling you, that just sets, you've spent years building up the trust of the community. Now you just lost their trust, or it's eroded quite a bit, and you built up all that trust, and now it's gone, and you've spent their resources, you spent a lot of time, money, resources for an election, and it's failed. And so it's just not good practice to go into it unprepared. And so the way the way that you go about an election like this, the greatest chance of success, there's not a lot of secret sauce. It's just really, really preparing and making sure that you've done all the work to anticipate that it's going to be successful. And that survey is really, really key. So you have the survey, you bring back those results, you develop a measure that aligns with their priorities, and then you might even, depending upon the timing of the measure, you might want to do some stakeholder outreach before or afterwards. A perfect example is we did a measure for the city of Palmdale. They wanted to build an aquatics facility that was going to serve the whole region. We did a survey for them, and the survey came back not supportive. And they used that information from the survey, and they knew where in the community they needed to outreach to, what they didn't like about the proposal, what they wanted to see in the proposal. They took that information in the survey. They went out and did a lot of stakeholder outreach, came back. They did a tracker survey again, and it said, okay, they're now supportive, and we went forward with the measure, and it passed. And so that's sort of how that community outreach comes into play as well. And just a little side note here. Once you launch into the public opinion survey phase, you don't want to be doing any outreach. You want a cold read of the community. So that's not a period of time that you want to have public hearings before your board. You want to be talking about these issues. You want to just sort of go quiet for a little bit because you don't want to bias the results of the survey. And then you go forward with the election, the ballot proceeding, and then once you're successful, you have to live up to your commitments, because most often with districts that do these local funding measures, they find they build upon themselves. You do a small little measure, you show the community had great success, and then you come back to them a few years later and say, now we'd like to do this. And when you've built up that trust, you've lived up to your commitments, they see that success, and now they're going to be more supportive. But if you lose, and it happens sometimes, but if you lose, that's where you have to dig yourself out now for quite a few years. So. And again, I touched on this, the benefits of the an accurate survey. So the survey is going to give you a lot of information. So I would speak to, I know, yes?
Well, Blair, I just wanted to interject. We talk a lot about the survey with John as well, and the board is totally behind the value and the importance of that survey and what it tells us, really from the community, because that's who we want to do these projects for. And so I guess that one of my questions is, how does the survey that you might do for a general obligation bond differ from the survey that we might do for special tax or benefit assessment?
Good question, very good question.
Something like that. And are they different, and how are they different?
So one of the differences that you have to be mindful of is who are the voters in these different measures. So remember, benefit assessment is the property owners that vote, and general obligation bond and special tax measures are the registered voters that need to vote. One option is that you can do a telephone survey of the registered voters in the district, and we partner with survey firms and campaign firms all the time on these different measures, and so there's great firms that can do that, a telephone survey. We actually have a model. If you're considering a benefit assessment or a special tax, you don't necessarily need to make that decision before you launch into the project, the feasibility analysis and survey, we actually have a mailed survey approach that we developed. Now it's been about 16 years. It's been very successful where, because when we were doing a lot of benefit assessment measures, we were using telephone surveys, but we found we were struggling with them being reflective of the actual results of the election. And so if you think about it, a benefit assessment is a mail ballot proceeding. They're actually getting their ballot in the mail. And so the best survey approach that we found is also a mailed survey approach, because you're mirroring what the election would be. So you're going to send a survey and say, what do you think of a $45 measure? And then they're going to get a ballot, and it's going to say $45 as well. And we found that that's most reflective. And we also have the capabilities of, in that same survey effort, testing what the registered voters would come back for. So our survey method, we'd be able to come back and say, here's the benefit assessment, and here's what it would be supportive or not, and what the rates are, and we'd be able to talk through the financial hurdle and the legal hurdles and give you that information. And then that same survey would be able to show you also, if you went with a special tax measure, here's where the support would come from, and you either, you hit the mark or you didn't. And so that process, you'd be able to evaluate either one of those funding mechanisms, and that the CFD would be somewhat similar. But a general obligation bond is a different animal, and it has different questions, and so you have to have sort of a different survey for that. But did that answer your question, Greg?
Well, that's kind of what I was getting into is ISM advisors were really, for the general obligation bond, they were really focusing on a telephone survey as what they consider the best method. But it sounds like for a special tax or a CFD that you would suggest doing a mail survey. Is that right?
I would, because you have the ability to test support for both of those. It could be, depending upon the results, you might say, I think special tax measure is the best option. Or it's like, no, the special tax measure isn't going to work, but the benefit assessment might. And then so you have to consider the other hurdles. But you have those options.
So the next obvious question is, tell us a little about the cost associated with those first two steps. The general obligation bond was a little bit different, kind of a low investment amount initially for the survey instrument, or so it seemed. Tell me about the cost for doing those first two steps, which is the evaluation of the financial, evaluation, and then the survey instrument in regard to what SEI would propose for the services.
I would budget between $30,000 to $40,000 for that effort, for the feasibility analysis and some of that preliminary special tax analysis. And assessment engineering, and some of that and that early effort, and then the mailed survey. And that's usually and we would work with you on the some specific scope of work and fees, and we'd be able to modify that. But I think that's probably a reasonable bracket. And I think if I recall correctly, and ISM Advisors is a great firm, and we actually have partnered with them. They do a lot of work in school districts, so they do great work as well. But I think that I think their model is that they put some of those costs in anticipation of the successful measure. Yeah. Right. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
But again, as I mentioned earlier, regardless, you need to do the work, whether it costs some money or not. Do the preparation, invest the time if you want to go for if you do want to go forward. let's see. I think I'm trying to remember if I had any other points that I wanted to raise with you. Anything else?
No, I think that's.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Hey, man.
Is there any time when you get the best results of voter to have it with the general election or to have it independent of a general election? Your rate of return from voters, is it in a general election would it kind of get lost and everything else? And
It depends. It really depends. So the timing, the timing is that's part of the feasibility analysis.
okay.
So that is to do some planning, as not only you're looking at these different options, but then you start putting together some timelines for different measures. We'd reach out to the registered voters and get some of that cost information. The goal here is that if you did want to pursue either a benefit assessment or a special tax, be it CFD special tax or regular one, that feasibility analysis public opinion survey, when it's presented before your board, it would present you all of the findings with some recommendations on where to proceed. So we talk about the timeline and the cost and a recommended path and everything. So it's really information to tell you whether you should proceed or not, and if so, how should you proceed? Whether it's one measure or the other, at what rate or the other, what are the priorities and everything else. And so that's, by the end of that, you should be able to have good information. Yeah. So this, Susan put this in here. This is just a hypothetical measure. I don't know. There's a number of different timelines depending upon the measure and everything else. Do you have a sense as to are you ready to do something soon? Is there a budget issue that you really need the funds for, or is it something that you could take some time to allow for enough time for this process?
I think you want to find out if the public is interested in.
Yeah, just that.
That's number one thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, if the public is interested in taking on some more money, for whatever projects we decide, then that's one thing. If the public's not interested in doing anything, they're happy with what they have and they don't want any more obligations. So, I mean, I was looking that we do it by November of 2020. And that's assuming that the public is interested in doing one of the 3 or 4 ways of financing it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that will be our discussion
Right.
in March, is more about these timelines. First, choosing a method that we're comfortable with, and then a survey that we're comfortable with, and getting that accomplished so that we can get a sense of where we're at. Because a lot of, I think, even the timeline will be directly correlated to what the results of the survey are.
Right.
Yeah, and is it, with Mike talking about, see, if we were to bring the topic up now, and then expect a vote in November of 2020, that's a long time period for the public to go up and down in opinion. I would suggest it's probably best to hit it and go down and then have your vote within a timeline of 9 months or 10 months of the period, rather than have it going over 14, 15, 16 months, because you're going to have public opinion go back and forth all over. Then they might get misinformation and the message might be lost. And
Well, I would think, Manny, and I'm kind of agreeing with you, but we're looking at March making a decision, right, about the survey.
In March, April.
Right, so then May, June, we're gonna do a survey and then get the results back and then decide
So how-
which one of, so now you're talking November 2019, so you're only a year out from an election. if they determine that that's,
Yeah, and I'm suggesting, well, California now has the voting in, what, March? They're going to March. So if we,
March.
the window I'm looking for is more condensed than yours.
Well, no,
But
that's.
I don't know, it depends on,
I think there are a lot of options.
yeah, that's
So,
it.
I mean,
I
there are a lot of methods for balloting, and there's a lot of options, whether that's November, March, June, I mean, and with 2020 being an election year, you do have those primaries, and so there will be, I think, plenty of opportunity for us to choose the
prime
timing.
Our own window,
if
yeah.
the surveys come back.
That's true.
Positive.
So with the special tax, the GEO bond measure, you have some certain dates that you can call for the election. But one benefit of the benefit assessment is that in theory you can hold that ballot proceeding anytime you want, and so you can drive that kind of course, there are optimal windows of opportunity that you want to go forward. You want to call for a ballot proceeding over the holidays or in the middle of the summer, but we typically, we've done a lot of these types of measures for recreation and park districts, and what we typically recommend, we don't have substantive data that shows this fact, but we usually find that you get more support in the spring because people are really interested in the parks. It's beautiful outside, so sometimes, everything else being equal, if you could do a spring measure and they're voting, when they're actually out in the parks, that can be optimal. We actually, whatever it takes to win. When we talk with fire protection districts, we're saying, go in the fall when fire season's occurring. And we've actually had some that right in the middle of an election and the fires break out and you get 92% support, So, that's a phenomenon, and that's one consideration, and that's the type of stuff that we'd help you with. But it sounds like the decision really before you, I don't want to be too forward, but it sounds like the decision before you is just whether you'd go with a general obligation bond measure or consider a benefit assessment or a special tax, because I think that those surveys are different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's really, are you okay with just financing capital projects, or do you want to open it up to recreation programs or maintenance? But whatever you think is best for you. But I think you're on the right track. So.
Is that on the finance committee, or is this going to be a special committee?
Well, no, this would be taken up at a regular board meeting in March, more than likely. Initially.
We can put it on the
Yeah,
agenda.
it seems like we need a
We can
separate
talk.
workshop.
Well, no, we can put it on the finance committee as a discussion, but I think we ought to have to be a full board in March to decide if we want to do a survey. I don't want to proceed unless we do a survey to see if the public is interested.
Well, I like the fact that we can take a survey and utilize it. I like the option of being able to utilize it to make a decision among the different options.
The 4 different options.
Right, so, to me, that's valuable, and that makes
Right.
sense to do. So I'm not necessarily leaning more towards the bond as much as I would rather see one of the,
See what the public's interested in.
Yes.
Well, I think that will be the discussion at the March meeting, and I think that you characterized it very well, Blair, in the sense that we do probably need to determine whether we are more in favor of surveying for a general obligation bond, or if we're in favor of surveying for the other methods.
Right.
So that is definitely going to be, I think, a March board meeting kind of choice.
Right.
And then we'll start, looking at.
No, we can certainly put it on, the finance committee for a discussion.
absolutely.
Yeah, because to me, there's more variables at play here than just which one are we using. If you look at his, the analysis that you have to do even before you just decide on the survey, it seems like. So what is the order we're doing? Survey first, do some analysis first? Because you have to do some analysis to come up with a dollar amount that you put on the survey.
Well, and that, a lot of that is what we're hoping to talk about at the 28th meeting, at February 28th meeting, is prioritizing those projects. Then, in the March meeting, we will determine a direction. And the direction, when it comes to the GO bond, is a little different than what Blair has described, at least from what I am perceiving. Their survey instrument is probably not quite as complicated. It is not as based in a complex financial analysis. I'm just going by what John Isom indicated. They have done a lot of surveys and they're very confident in their survey method for the GO bond type, model. Blair's presentation talked about it's a little more expensive process, but you do some of that financial modeling up front, and you create the survey based on that, and the survey may be a little more refined or specific than the general obligation bond survey. I don't know that for sure, but I'm characterizing that based on some of the comments that John made to us in January. So I think that those are going to be some discussion points that we will go through and talk about in March.
If I could be forward here, because you're our client, so I'm just trying whatever's in your best interest. I'm not trying to sell you on one thing or the other, believe me. But I think their survey, they don't charge for the survey at all, do they?
No, they do. It's between $6,000 and $10,000 was their estimate for the survey instrument. And so primarily, like you said, some of their fees are back-loaded, whereas, and they're just paying for the survey instrument, which is basically the company, I think he said San Diego or Salt Lake City, that actually conducts the survey, and then there's obviously some tabulation that's necessary.
Maybe you do both, or maybe you do the GO bond measure, first, because it's a lower cost. Now, I don't know. Typically, when the surveys that we've done for park and recreation districts, and I'm generalizing here, please, I'm just generalizing, I hope this is helpful, but we usually find that the top project that's most interested by the public is just well-maintained parks, and they just want an investment in those parks. And so that's might be a question for you. And then just capital projects are sort of a hit or miss. It really just depends. Sometimes you think something funding a brand new aquatics facility would be great, and sometimes they say no way, and it's really hard. But maybe that might be an option for you as well, because I remember that their survey was very inexpensive, and so maybe that could give you a little.
I think it's a tough decision for the board, honestly, because it's not as cut and dry as we might think it is. Because with ISM advisors, they want you to sign an agreement, and the agreement is to go forward with a general obligation bond method. And so part of that strategy for their consulting firm is to have a low front-end cost for the survey, but then
eventually there's going to be additional costs.
They make it up in essence through the bonding and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just trying to lay this out because there's a contrast and it's different. I think that SEI's method is there's a little more cost up front, as far as doing a little more work on the financing side and the survey, and there's not as much fee oriented on the backside. There's certainly engineers reports if you go through I assume community facilities district type financing. I'm not really sure what it is on the special tax side, but so I think that it's a little different strategy, each one of them, and a little less cost up front, maybe for the geo bonds, a little higher cost for the other methods. But it doesn't necessarily mean one is, the best choice for the district. I think you have to choose the funding method, and I thought your summary was very good that wise too. It is kind of a capital project versus a more flexible opportunity, for capital projects, but also potentially, other types of things that you're potentially going to try to fund. You still have to justify every part of it to the public and ensure that you're, talking about what they are interested in having happen. So,
If I may, I would say if you did decide to do both, I would probably recommend the GeoBond survey first. And I think if it's only like $8,000, that's just to give you a sense. The survey firms that we work with, they'd be charging about $30,000 for that effort, just to do the survey itself. So that is and I can't necessarily, these are actually survey firms that that's what they do, is survey work. I can't compare that to ISOM survey, but it still sounds like it's a big discount from what you'd pay a regular survey firm. Yeah.
Can we get a soft copy of this?
Sure.
I like the one summary one of the votes and.
Yeah. Well, Blair, I really appreciate you coming.
I'm glad I made it. I didn't want to show up and you guys were sitting there waiting for me, so I'm glad that I was able to make it. So
It was good, and I don't think it could be better for us because we are really now, I think, putting together kind of the whole picture of what the options are and the opportunities, and so, thank you. I know it's really
And any other questions on either of them, give me a call. We'll just give you our unvarnished thoughts and just.
Other than, like Sharon said, I think can we get a copy?
Yes, they got
Yeah,
it.
we'll get a copy.
So we can have something to look back on. All right.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
I feel a lot
Appreciate it.
better now.
Yes.
I did.
Good. Well, you're doing the right thing. You're making an informed decision. So this is the level of effort you really need to go through, even before you just start an effort. Just really understand what's all involved. But yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, directors and staff's brief comments.
Nothing.
Start with Melissa. You got it, good. All right, Jason.
Good.
When does swimming start?
It's the first week of May, so whatever that Monday is, I think it's the 29th?
And then lessons are,
Oh, not till June, because school gets out
okay, all right, okay.
weird this year.
And so
Yeah, it's all
so then the pool starts getting up in mid-April?
Well, we'll start getting up with probably getting things going right at the end of March, trying to get it, because we'll have, like our Sun Splash will come in and do their training, we'll have our training and everything come
Also,
out.
make sure that all the pumps and everything, the seals are sealing and the chemicals are working. And right about then, it'll be nice and warm and the grass will be growing.
Yeah, we're hopeful
Rossi, anything else other than
Well, just kind of waiting for the weather to
Calm down.
calm down?
let us, start going out. Everything seems to hit right after the sun comes out, so just preparing for that. And
You probably still got at least another month or longer, maybe 6 weeks.
we love the rain, so
Yeah.
the more the better for us.
I like a lot, I don't like the
Jennifer, anything?
Form 700,
I
April
saw
2nd,
I
will be
did
here
turn mine
before
in.
you know it.
In our
If you
training,
didn't get
right?
your email, let me know.
And should I have to find that training email? Where'd that come from?
Form 700.
Training.
What is it?
Oh, from Target?
Ethics training, the Target,
It's not-
Target solution?
Yeah,
Yeah.
But it's not ethics training, right? It's not, we don't
for
have,
her.
For her.
Hers is too.
Yeah.
the rest of ours are up to date, except for
I
the
think the
7th.
next one is Erica in June, but I won't send her.
How come I'm the only one that's off today? I could swear I just did it last year.
Because you're bad.
It's been 2.
I have to do double.
But we should have received an email.
For for Form 700, yes.
Okay,
If
I
you
did
didn't,
not.
let me know. You didn't?
Yes.
She's-
Yeah, I don't remember Form 700.
Yeah, I wonder if they come out.
So maybe,
No.
so if you could put on your,
Yeah, last
let
one
us
you
know
didn't
by the next board meeting, who has and hasn't done the 700 form.
Ooh, okay.
Because it's due April, and so that'll be,
Okay, you're gonna be calling people out.
well, no.
Okay, look right at me.
Well, no,
I can
because-
never hand over my one from the Department of Corrections and go here, they won't take it. I
Well,
have to do it again.
on the 14th, it'll be, you only have 2 weeks to do it,
I
so.
know.
And I'm surprised you don't
Push
do
up
it
the
early.
shove, so. If you could let us know by the 14th.
Sure.
Who's Greg? And Jerry, you're not taking vacation until later, right?
Yeah, I have a couple coming up. One is in fairly early March and before the board meeting, and then one a little later in April. So I'll let you know.
Let's only worry about the board meeting for that.
Best of Orangevale, congratulations. And please tell the staff, Annie and Samuel and the front staff who helped me with all that. Everybody did a great job. So it makes it nice to have an easy rental.
You did too, and I've got to say that it was a very nice event. I thought it went, I liked the quickness of it.
Me too.
It-
Last year I wanted to go.
Everybody,
The one guy kept saying, well, I want to stretch this out. I'm waiting for going.
I wasn't sure why it was.
We needed to slow it down just a tad because there's 2 reasons. One, because as the person who owns the event, I have to make a budget. So we needed that bar to stay open a little longer. But there was also some parents who were trying to make it for the citizens of the year. And so I was trying to really, the big goal is to try to make it so that all the winners get,
Of course.
so they were able to make
Maybe
it.
tell it, we're tell us he's trying to stretch it out.
Well, yeah, my MCs, they're funny, and the only other challenge we had was, my lighting guy was in the desert with his toys, and I couldn't get a light to shine down on the presenters, so we kept blinding them with the new LEDs, and they were just like, ah, but we'll fix that for next year, so, but, yeah.
All right, Erica, pretty daughter, happy birthday, by the way.
I will. We're celebrating tomorrow.
Yeah, I know, you're Lego 2 and.
Yes.
Your husband was here.
Oh, I was like, how did you know?
I feel there's not, we'll find out what's going on. No, he was here doing basketball practice.
Okay. Did he mention that he really likes the wax that's under the key?
So that did work out well.
Yeah, it's really well, because the other one, he said it's slippery again.
Yeah. So that's the feedback we needed to know that what, I don't actually like how the wax underneath in the key is shine wise, and I was actually thinking about getting someone else out here to give us another.
Oh, he said he likes it.
It's probably good on that, but the shine didn't stay.
Under the key?
Yeah. It's still, it's probably being picky more than anything.
Oh, okay, because he was saying the opposite. He said it's still shiny.
Sharon, anything?
Nope.
Manny, you got all sorts of pictures.
7 years ago, no. There's an article, a really good article about skateboarding locally, and has a lot of information, including skateboard groups here in Sacramento. So I'll drop it by tomorrow. And Orangevale was again notified about best housing in the region, and they show horses, part of our park, and they do go into our park kind of in detail and say it's a gym. They talk about open country and horses and trails and disc golf. That's it.
We got a kitchen posted.
I need to buy a duplex.
And
I don't want to keep
I
it
got
over
nothing
here.
other than,
So
for next time are the resolution for the Larry Bean.
Yeah, we'll put the resolution on.
And then we're also going to be talking about further along discussion about survey bond, whatever. Correct?
And it's
Yep.
not Larry, it's the agreement with the county for the,
Well, yeah, that one will be on too, but the other one was the resolution just identifying where the in lieu and park development fees.
oh, that one, that resolution.
Yeah.
The one, I guess that was D.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get those on.
That's the one we pulled, yeah.
And then I guess you're gonna maybe update us on the Hazel Avenue.
That'll be on too.
All right, that's waiting out.
Thank you.
All right, so can I get a motion?
I motion that we're done.
To adjourn.
I'll second. My motion.
Yeah, well, I am done, so thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, 5-0, first motion.
Keep it going.
We've got a-
Let's see, here's the picture.